Let me talk to you about the weight of expectation. How often are you excited for a game and when it comes out, it actually delivers on your expectations? That very rarely happens for me, but one game where it did happen is Sonic CD.
Now, I never got Sonic CD at launch, and my late acquisition of the game helped raise it to near mythical status. It was a Sonic game, so I knew I wanted it. I'd only seen it in the centre spread of the Sonic 2 Gold Guide, and bizarrely during a little boat ride at Alden Towers. It was only available on the Mega CD, which is a console nobody owned except me, so when I finally got the game I was essentially an adult, but it had left an indomitable impression on me. I needed this game. It was the final piece of the 2D Sonic puzzle that I'd never played, and all 2D Sonic is good Sonic, right? So when that fateful Christmas day came around and I opened a copy of Sonic CD, I was in heaven. Playing Sonic CD is a bizarre experience in that it flies against tradition. This is a Sonic game that doesn't have streamlined linear stages that can be blasted through in record time. Sonic CD's stages are vast, multi-tiered, and force the player to explore. Exploration is the key to enjoying Sonic CD, and you need to unlearn traditional 2D Sonic to really enjoy it. Each stage offers the player the ability to travel into the past and future, and upon arrival you'll notice subtle changes to the level geometry. The game doesn't outright state it, but the goal of Sonic CD is to travel to the past and defeat Robotnik's badnik generators, turning the bad future, where Robotnik pollutes the landscape, into a good future. This means there's 4 different layouts for every single act in the game, creating a massive behemoth of a Sonic title that absolutely demands a more careful and considered approach. Simply barreling through a stage will only give you a very limited experience with Sonic CD, and while it's perfectly fine to play it that way, you'll miss all the cool stuff that a bit of exploration off the beaten path can bring. I became addicted to Sonic CD. I wanted to see everything the game had to offer, whether it was just seeing all the different variants of every stage, or unlocking the visual test menu and the DA garden. Sonic CD seemed to offer so much more than your average Mega Drive Sonic outing. It was everything I wanted from Sonic and more, but nowadays it seems to really polarise fans. Sonic CD is not a typical 2D Sonic title, and to really enjoy it you definitely need to be more patient with it. But for someone who relishes in the idea of a vastly bigger Sonic title that demands I spend a little bit more time digging for its secrets, Sonic CD is an absolute treasure. It's no longer a weird oddity that you can only play exclusively on a Mega CD anymore as well. Christian Whitehead led a remake of the title that released in 2011, and it's basically available on absolutely everything now, and it feels like a tighter, more refined experience as well, with added widescreen support. To me, Sonic CD is the greatest Sonic game of all time, and it's all down to that weight of expectation. I was convinced it was incredible, and when I finally experienced it, it absolutely was. Yes, mate. The Game Gear is a load of old toot. It takes 6 AA batteries that drain faster than a British Airways toilet. It has a rubbish D-pad that feels mushy and inaccurate, a screen that suffers from terrible ghosting, and it wouldn't fit in MC Hammer's pockets, let alone your average Joe. That's not to mention that every working Game Gear nowadays has all its capacitors replaced because all the originals have slowly died. But despite all this, the Game Gear is actually a pretty decent system. Not the actual hardware itself, Lord no, but in its software library. The Game Gear is hiding some absolute bangers that deserve a second look. Take its pack-in game, Sega Game Pack 4-in-1, which offers every new Game Gear owner a great little tech showcase in the form of Smash Tennis, a great little tennis game that absolutely slaughters the Game Boy's first-party tennis title, Columns 2, which is essentially the really fun Flash Columns mode that we all know and love, Rally Challenge, which is a solid little arcade time attack racer, and Penalty Kickout, which is the only duffer in the collection and takes the form of a rather dull football title. Then you've got a whole host of Sonic exclusives, which are headlined by the incredible Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble, which takes the Sonic Chaos formula of trying to make a solid Sonic title on extremely limited 8-bit hardware, and actually delivers on that promise. Then there's GG Shinobi 2 The Silent Fury. Basically the Mega Man of Shinobi titles, you can attack this game in any order and unlock different coloured ninja with different abilities. This helps you explore the difficult stages and defeat bosses in the optimum way. Then there's stuff like Fantasy Zone Gear, which is an extremely competent and enjoyable Fantasy Zone game that's entirely exclusive to the Game Gear. But what about ports of the big Mega Drive titles of the time? The Game Gear even has that covered, with incredibly impressive ports of Ristar, Gunstar Heroes, and Dynamite Headdy all gracing the system. They shouldn't be any good, but here they are, and they play brilliantly. These games do not deserve to be locked away on such a terrible piece of hardware, but for all its faults, the Game Gear rocked an incredible software library. And if you want to widen that library even further, get yourself a Gear Master and play all your Master System games on it as well. Man, the Game Gear was brilliant, except it wasn't.
Hello and welcome back to Sega Central. I'm Shan Derriden and I've been locked in a cupboard for the last 2 years at Sega's headquarters. And I'm being fed intravenously with terrible ports from the Sega Forever range. Here, Shan, we've stuck out another port of Sonic CD, but we've stuck a load of adverts on it to make it even more painful to play. Woo!
Shoot-em-ups are like distilled video games for me. Fly a little spaceship around and blast away loads of aliens. I'm all in for that mess. And you know what system has a bloody excellent library of shoot-em-ups? The Mega Drive. The Mega Drive feels like it was engineered specifically to allow shmup developers to do their thing. And there's so many great offerings to choose from, we have to take a deep dive. Now let's tackle the heavy hitters before we discuss some obscurities. First up, there's Musha, or however the hell you pronounce that. A Japan and North American exclusive, this entry in the LS series is basically the best vertical scrolling shmup on the Mega Drive. Fast, frantic and extremely flashy, it bolsters its impressive visuals with an extremely customizable flying mech and some of the best bosses in any game for the Mega Drive. Then there's Advanced Buster Hawk Glaylancer, which already delivers with its incredibly cool title. Probably the Mega Drive's crowning achievement when it comes to horizontal scrolling shmups, Glaylancer features a whole host of ways to shoot and they're all accessible from the get-go. You can also control your ship's movement speed, upgrade your firepower to nigh on ridiculous levels, and the overall presentation just screams cool. Thunder Force 4 is probably the most widely available good shmup on the Mega Drive, and it offers similarly extensive customization options as Glaylancer, but gives you extremely tall stages to fly around and explore. It's rock hard, but you'll only get better through repeated play. You'll want to keep playing it as well because the soundtrack is so metal. And then what about stuff like Eliminate Down? Another phenomenally cool horizontal shmup. Eliminate Down is extremely effects heavy, and while it's not particularly original, it still manages to wow visually. At this point, we haven't even touched weirder stuff like Darwin 4081. As the name suggests, there's a heavy evolution theme to this one, and you can level up your ship with some of the most extreme firepower seen on the Mega Drive. However, your ship is constantly devolving and losing its firepower, so it encourages aggressive play to unveil more power-ups to get you ready for the bosses. And of course, we can't talk about Mega Drive shmups without mentioning Zero Wing. Zero Wing is sadly remembered as more of a meme, thanks to its opening sequence featuring some of the most infamous English in any video game. But did you know it's also a pretty solid shmup in its own right? Zero Wing's big gimmick is its tractor beam, which can be used to grab smaller enemies to be used as either shields or projectiles. It's not far off the awesome capture system from G Darius, which it is clearly inspired. And there's so much more we can mention, like Gaia Res with its awesome suck the power-ups out of enemies gimmick, steampunk shooter Empire of Steel, and the gothic body horror stylings of Gynoog. You are absolutely spoiled for choice when it comes to shmups on the Mega Drive, and if blasting hordes of beasties is your thing, then you should absolutely check out these games. Oh mate, that's just a big willy. Believe it or not, some Sega games have never made it out of the arcade and onto home consoles. Sega were a dominant force in the arcades, and so many of their classic franchises started there, and then made their way onto their home systems. But despite becoming a first-party publisher with many systems to their name, not all of their arcade games ever made the leap from noisy arcades full of stand-up cabinets to a smaller screen in your bedroom. There are some pretty famous examples here. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog is an isometric Sonic title that debuted Sonic's pals Ray the Flying Squirrel and Mighty the Armadillo, who have appeared as recent as 2018 with their inclusion in Sonic Mania Plus. It's a unique title that uses a trackball for directional input, and it's this control scheme that's been blamed on why it's never made it to home consoles. It was once scheduled for inclusion in Sonic Gems collection, but due to issues emulating the trackball controls, it was eventually removed, but artwork for Sega Sonic does still appear in the game's museum menu. It's honestly a bit crazy to me that a Sonic game remains arcade exclusive and not available on like 58 different Sega compilations. Another famous example is Golden Axe Revenge of Death Adder. Often regarded as the best game in the franchise, this 4-player cooperative beat-em-up features all new characters, new beasts to ride and some of the most dynamic beat-em-up action to grace the genre. The fact it remains arcade exclusive is actually kind of criminal. But then we've got more experimental releases. In 1991, Sega debuted a new type of arcade cabinet featuring their System 32 hardware. This hologram cabinet features a display that uses the famous Pepper's Ghost illusion, which reflects an image off a mirror to make characters appear like they're appearing in a 3D space. 2 games use this cabinet, the first being Time Traveller, which bizarrely does have a home release on PC, CD-ROM and DVD, but the arcade exclusive hologram title we're going to take a look at is Holosseum. Holosseum is a one-on-one fighter that isn't really anything special to play, but its unique presentation makes it really striking to look at. I feel like the 1996 Sonic the Hedgehog OVA also pays homage to Holosseum in a roundabout way. Speaking of fighting games, let's talk about Dark Edge. Before Virtua Fighter came along and revolutionised fighting games with its 3D graphics and depth of combat, Sega had a crack at a 3D fighter using nothing but 2D imagery. Dark Edge does an amazing job of presenting the player with a fighting game that takes place in a 3D space through impressive use of sprite scaling, something Sega have proven they do better than anyone else. It's not a particularly memorable game outside of this, but a nice little footnote in the history of fighting games that's worth a look. And how about a mashup of Super Hang-On and Outrun? Well, Racing Hero is exactly that. The game is very much in keeping with Super Hang-On, featuring a character on a motorcycle that sports a livery not too dissimilar to the one that's featured in Super Hang-On. You race against the clock to the next stage, but then all of a sudden it becomes Outrun with its pyramid of branching paths. Once again, Sega's awesome sprite scaling makes this look stunning in motion, and it's a great little title that doesn't deserve to be locked away to arcade exclusivity. Finally, let's look at a good old rail shooter. Sega has pedigree when it comes to rail shooters, and the House of the Dead and Virtua Cop franchises are some of the most well-loved. But then there's Rail Chase. This title has all the makings of a classic arcade rail shooter. It essentially riffs on the minecart chase from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and sees you racing down mineshafts in your little cart and blowing away enemies left, right and centre. As the game progresses, the environments get more and more ridiculous and you can't help but laugh at it. It also has a similarly arcade-exclusive sequel that goes full 3D, but is similarly bonkers in execution. So there you go. Sega are still digging through their back catalogue for arcade treasures, so some of these may yet still receive a home console port. For example, futuristic motorcycle combat racer Motor Raid has been announced as a playable arcade title in the upcoming Yakuza spin-off Judgment. So you never know what Sega oddities might still make their way home.
Well then guys, thank you very much for joining me for the first episode of the Sega Driven expansion slot. This video actually marks our 10th anniversary of SEGADriven.com, which is mad to think about, it's got to be said. But yeah, thanks for being with us for this. Hopefully we continue for many years more. Really still enjoying the website and making video stuff like this. So yeah, last thing to say really is if you're celebrating Christmas, then have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. If you're not, I hope you enjoy a nice sort of winter break. But other than that, yeah, thanks very much for tuning in. I've been Lewis Clark, aka Sonic Yoda, and I'm going to chill out and play some games now. So yeah, see you next time.